I mean, I think the whole idea of getting a lot of people to like use ChatGPT and all of this stuff is to lead us down this path that Kissinger and Schmidt, among others, sort of are charting out for humanity. Where if you, it's pretty much common sense though. Like if you develop a skill and then don't do it for 10 or 15 years, for example, you kind of forget how to do it, right? Or even, I graduated from university like a little more than 10 years ago. How well do I recall the stuff that I took in university? Not great, right? So there's this whole idea of if you don't use it, you lose it. So if people are depending on AI to tell them where to turn when they're driving their car and, no one uses like actual maps anymore. I mean, I understand that it's convenient, right? And I'm not saying like, oh, we need to go back to the 90s, right? But, it becomes after a while a slippery slope where people are just having the computer tell them everything to do. Every step of their lives ends up becoming micromanaged to an extent. And the idea is that AI, through all the data that it absorbs about us, knows so much about us. Some of these people say it knows us better than we even know ourselves. There's that allows for an unprecedented degree of manipulation. And the problem is that the people producing and programming AI and ultimately controlling AI and what it can do not have our best interests at heart. And it is not a good idea to basically hand them our brains in a bag,
Artificial intelligence has finally arrived. It promises humanity the ability to skyrocket productivity and usher in a new era of innovation and abundance. However, there is a very sinister, darker side of artificial intelligence. It can also be used as a tool of control and power. This is the latest warning out from Whitney Webb. In her latest interview, Whitney Webb breaks down why AI is a slippery slope and why if AI is given enough data and falls into the wrong hands, it can be used as a tool of unprecedented manipulation. Make sure to stick around to the end of the video where Whitney breaks down why power needs to be taken away from centralized control and put back into the hands of the people, a future that Bitcoin certainly plays a role in. Also guys, only a small percentage of my viewers are actually subscribed. If you enjoy finance content, consider subscribing or liking the video. It's free and you can always change your mind. Now here's Whitney Webb on the hidden dangers of AI.
Yeah, totally. But who owns AI, right? It's pretty much Silicon Valley companies. So like even OpenAI, Sam Altman's thing, that's essentially like owned by Microsoft, right? And so you have Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Oracle, all of these companies essentially owning like all. I mean, I think the whole idea of getting a lot of people to like use ChatGPT and all of this stuff is to lead us down this path that Kissinger and Schmidt, among others, sort of are charting out for humanity. Oh, well, it's fair to put super intelligent AI in charge of it. And then that AI is like, oh, well, this person's been very compliant and hasn't committed all of these thought crimes, but not you. Who is it going to decide to give the food rations to and stuff like that? That's the risk of a lot of this stuff when it gets put in charge of too many systems. They've gone from before this AI algorithm to identifying something like 15 to 20 targets a day to identifying hundreds of targets a day. Something's going on. And there's a huge issue there with what if that AI is using, social media activity to decide who lives and who dies, literally. And what happens when that kind of technology gets exported. I mean, Israel's tech sector specifically is known for testing all sorts of tech on Palestinians, surveillance tech and weapons tech, and then they export it abroad. Israel's defense tech and defense industry is massive. It's like, I think, one of the biggest parts of their GDP, right? So, this isn't just going to stay there. And AI weaponry has also been tested in Ukraine to a significant degree. And there's a lot of people, the same people that created Palantir, essentially Peter Thiel, a lot of that money is behind, the AI weaponry stuff today. That's troubling stuff. And then there's another issue of whether AI is actually accurate or not. So, they'll say, like with facial recognition, I think there was a report a few years ago in the UK that a lot of the facial recognition stuff that the Met Police and other law enforcement groups are using are insanely inaccurate. but they want to continue using it and like deepen its involvement in identifying people, whether it's like at live events and all sorts.
Let me ask, the movie Leave the World Behind, which was produced by the Obamas, paints a pretty distressing picture of how you could turn America against itself in 3 easy steps. Step 3 being civil war. How easy do you think it is in reality to destabilize the US or any other major country?
I love that you start with this question, and I love that you didn't give me any hints that you were going to start with this question, because I recently watched Leave the World Behind, and I thought it was just a brilliant piece of the human experience, right? First of all, to answer your question directly, destabilizing the United States would be very difficult, because at the end of the day, the US we are a strong unifying culture. When we are attacked, it supersedes all other things. We saw that with 9/11. We saw it in the Vietnam War. We saw it time and time again, right? When we are attacked, it unifies us. It's not the same cultural response every country has. So if we were to see a large scale hack, if TVs were to suddenly go down, radios were to suddenly go down, if the whole network and infrastructure started to fall apart, if Teslas started self-driving themselves and blocking roads, the last thing we would do is start killing each other. If anything, we would all unify, because at our core, we are a fighting culture. It's one of our biggest flaws and one of our biggest strengths. We are
We are now in a new era of wars, and unless we re-establish order fast, then we are doomed.
Yuval Noah Harari,
one of the brightest minds on planet Earth.
Historian, a best-selling author
of some of the most influential non-fiction books in the world today.
I think we are very near the end of our species, because people often spend so much effort trying to gain something without understanding the consequences. For example, we will get to a life where you can live indefinitely, but realizing that you have a chance to live forever. But if there is an accident, you die, the people who will be in that situation will be at a level of anxiety and terror unlike anything that we know. Then you have artificial intelligence, and the world is not ready for it. It's the first technology in history that can make decisions by itself and take power away from us, to hack human beings, manipulate our behavior, and making all these decisions for us or about us. Whether to give you a loan, whether to give you a mortgage, dating apps shaping your romantic life. But the real problem is that increasingly the humans at the top could be puppets when the most consequential decisions are made by algorithms. Global financial decisions, wars. This is extremely dangerous, but it's not inevitable. Humans can change it.
But with what's to come, are you optimistic about the future?
I'm very worried about two things. First of all,
quick one. This is really, really fascinating to me. On the back end of our YouTube channel, it says that 69.9% of you that watch this channel frequently over the lifetime of this channel haven't yet hit the subscribe button. I just wanted to ask you a favor. It helps this channel so much if you choose to just subscribe. Helps us scale the guests, helps us scale the production, and it makes this show bigger. So if I could ask you for one favor, if you've watched this show before and you've enjoyed it and you like this episode that you're currently watching, could you please hit the subscribe button? Thank you so much, and I will repay that gesture by making sure that everything we do here gets better and better and better and better. That is a promise I'm willing to make you. Do we have a deal? Yuval, I have 3 of your books here, and these are 3 books that sent a huge tidal wave, a ripple through society. With these books and with all of the work that you're doing now, with the lectures you give, the interviews you give, what is your mission? What is the sort of, if I was to be able to summarize what your collective mission is with your work, what is that?
it's to clarify and to focus the public conversation, the global conversation, to help people focus on the most important challenges that are facing humankind, and also to bring at least a little bit of clarity to the collective and to the individual mind. I mean, one of my main messages in all the books is that our minds are like factories that constantly produce stories and fictions that then come between us and the world. And we often spend our lives interacting with fictions that we or that other people created, with completely losing touch with reality. And my job, and I think the job of historians more generally, is to show us a way out.
Inherent in much of your work is what feels like a warning. And I've watched hundreds of videos that you've produced or interviews you've done all around the world, and it feels like you're trying to warn us about something, multiple things.
Mm-hmm.
If my estimation there is correct, what is the warning?
Much of what we take to be real is fictions. And the reason that fictions are so central in human history is because we control the planet, and rather than the chimpanzees or the elephants or any of the other animals, not because of some kind of individual genius that each of us has, but because we can cooperate much better than any other animal. We can cooperate in much larger numbers and also much more flexibly. And the reason we can do that is because we can create and believe in fictional stories. Because every large-scale human cooperation, whether a religion or nations or corporations, are based on mythologies, on fictions. Again, I'm not just talking about gods. This is the easy example. Money is also a fiction that we created. Corporations are a fiction. They exist only in our minds. Even lawyers would tell you that corporations are legal fictions. And this is, on the one hand, such a source of immense power. But on the other hand, again, the danger is that we completely lose touch with reality. And we are manipulated by all these fictions, by all these stories. Again, stories are not bad. They are tools. As long as we use them to cooperate and to help each other, that's wonderful. Money is not bad. If we didn't have money, we would not have a trade network. Everybody would have, maybe with their friends and family, to produce everything by themselves, like the chimpanzees do. The fact that we can enjoy food and clothing and medicines and entertainment created by people on the other side of the world is largely because of money. But if we forget that this is a tool that we created in order to help ourselves, and instead this tool kind of enslaves us and runs our life. And, I'm now just back home in Israel. There is a terrible war being waged. And most wars in history, and also now, they are about stories. They're about fictions. People think that humans
A warning now, some viewers may find images in this next story distressing. More than 40 false killer whales and one bottlenose dolphin had to be euthanized last night after becoming stranded near Mahia Peninsula in Hawke's Bay. Earlier, locals had managed to refloat them before they became beached again. As Henry McMullen reports, it was the first stranding of the species here in around 4 decades.
They're coming here!
Oh no. Fast approaching the Mahia coastline. This local watching from the top of the hill.
We thought, nah, this is odd, this isn't normal.
Fascination quickly turning to concern.
You're going to get beached, mate. Oh my God! Oh, he's going to get stuck.
The 45-odd false killer whales and one bottlenose dolphin first stranded before 2 p.m. yesterday at the rocky beach in Taylors Bay.
They were screaming. It is probably the thing that's stopping me from sleeping because you can hear this screaming in your ears. They were making more than a noise. They were really yelling out for help.
While whale strandings aren't uncommon, for this species, it's extremely rare.
With the tragic events that unfolded, there's got to be something in the haystack to look for that is a bit of positivity, and we hope to learn a lot more.
Like why these creatures stranded in the first place.
So is there any connection between all this seismic activity, or is it coincidental that we seem to be off to a shaky start in 2024?
It's probably coincidental.
We begin tonight with 2 earthquakes hitting California and Hawaii.
Tonight, damage assessments underway after Southern California was rattled by a 4.6 magnitude earthquake.
The entertainment capital of the world is also home to several influencers who were creating content when their focus was suddenly shifted.
We have a... Oh God. Is that an earthquake?
I think I'm gonna go collarbone length. Oh, babe, is that an earthquake? What do we do? Oh my God, blow up the candles, blow up the candles. Oh my God.
The quake came hours after a 5.7 magnitude shaker jolted the Big Island of Hawaii. The USGS says the earthquake struck Mauna Loa, the world's largest active volcano.
It definitely moved a lot around here.
The California quake coming on the heels of a 5.7 quake that hit the Big Island of Hawaii. Reporter Jeremy Lee from our station KITV is near the epicenter.
It was felt all over the island. Not only that, but also on other islands. Reports of the earthquake felt on Maui, on Oahu.
That quake also followed by multiple aftershocks.
For the third time in 2 months, a volcano has roared to life in Iceland. A state of emergency has been declared.
This is the second time, well, that was the second time the village came in the line of fire with that first eruption in December. These events, Carl and Sarah, are providing spectacular images, but they are causing serious headaches.
Iceland averages an eruption every 4 or 5 years, but volcanologists are concerned about this kind of sustained activity just about 30 miles from its capital.
A road near one of Iceland's top attractions, the Blue Lagoon, cut off. A fiery mess pouring across the bitumen, engulfing the highway, leaving several cars stranded. There had been warning signs before the volcano erupted near the town of Grindavik, with hundreds of small earthquakes in recent days.
Wow, this is the third time the volcano has erupted since last December. Iceland typically experiences an average of 1 eruption every 3 to 4 years.
Major effort is underway in Chile, where wildfires are ravaging the country's central region.
Emergency teams have been struggling to control the fires, which have spread rapidly across the Valparaiso region. The forest fires are thought to be the deadliest ever recorded in Chile.
The nearly 100 fires come amid a summer heat wave in Chile.
Listen, we're probably going to ruffle some feathers with this one, but it's got to be done because I'm seeing a slew of young millionaire YouTubers out there that are slinging all sorts of business, investing, and financial advice. And the truth is, the majority of them are straight up lying to you. And the other ones, well, they may not be lying, but they are wrong in a lot of cases. Now, we're not going to bother with the really blatant offenders because they tend to be pretty easy to weed out with just a little bit of digging. They're typically the guys who are renting out airplanes, their Lambos, and just trying to sell you on their course, which, if anything, is either content they took from someone else or it's them just making up some garbage and putting a pretty little bow on it. Now, the guys that we're going to focus on in this video, they're a higher class of criminal. Okay, actually, that's overselling it. The young YouTube millionaires we're going to talk about here actually aren't bad guys. In a lot of cases, they're wicked smart and they've tapped into a wisdom far beyond their years. Not to mention that they've made way more money than I ever did before turning 25. So sure, go ahead and keep watching their content because these guys truly are a great source of inspiration and entertainment. But when it comes to learning from these people, well, that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Because you see, the most important skill that you got to develop on your path to winning the money game is that of judgment. You have to develop the ability to consume information, to break it apart into its component pieces, and then critically evaluate it. And then to take that information and keep the parts that serve you while ignoring the parts that don't. And this skill is so damn important when it comes to these young YouTube millionaires because truthfully, they say a lot of great things that I absolutely agree with. But they also say some things, often without even realizing it, that are just flat out wrong. Now, truthfully, it's not really their fault. I don't think that they're trying to mislead you. They're young and they don't quite see the full picture yet. So please don't take this as the rantings of a disgruntled old man just bitter at the youth for kicking ass and taking names. But here's how young YouTube millionaires lie to you and why you probably shouldn't be taking advice from them. First, numbers don't lie, but I can make them say whatever I want. Over the past 3 years, I've raised $25 million of capital from private investors to invest in commercial real estate. Often, when I sit down with a new or first-time investor, they're eager just to jump straight to the returns, which makes perfect sense. Like, of course, you want to get an idea of how much you could potentially make in a deal, but it's the absolute wrong place to start. And the reason is this: numbers don't lie, but I can make them say whatever I want. So when I show you my return projections and all my fancy spreadsheets, if you don't trust me, you can't trust my numbers. Because inside of all those rows and columns and assumptions, I can hide pretty much whatever I want. So I want you to think about this next time you're watching some young YouTube millionaire, because at some point, they're going to use numbers to impress you. And if you don't speak the language of those numbers, then you can very easily be misled. For instance, one of the most popular video titles out there is How I Became a Millionaire by 23 or something like that. Full disclosure, I have a video just like that on my channel about how I went from $80,000 in debt to a millionaire in only 3 years, and you can check that out here. But what exactly does it mean to be a millionaire? It's pretty straightforward, basic question, right? Well, not really. Are you an income millionaire, meaning you made $1 million of income in the past 12 months? Or are you a net worth millionaire, which means if we add up the complete value of all your assets minus all your liabilities, they'd be worth north of $1 million? Or are you the rarest of all breeds, the liquid millionaire, meaning you have just $1 million in cash or cash equivalents sitting around? So you see, one word, 3 definitions. And you might be saying, yeah, Anthony, who cares? Regardless of which definition you use, it's a lot of money, right? Maybe not. For instance, if you've got $1 million income, but your yearly expenses are $1.5 million, then you actually lost $500,000. And I don't know about you, but that's not someone I would take advice from. Now, the easiest way for a young YouTube millionaire to lie is about their net worth. Again, to calculate net worth, we subtract all your liabilities.
I want to jump to the story from The Telegraph, hosted by Yahoo News. World War III is approaching fast, and too few are willing to admit why. Well, the article is very interesting. It does mention that there was a drone attack on a U.S. base near Jordan, but it mentions the core reason is that authoritarian regimes are failing. Iran and Russia, for instance, struggling to keep themselves afloat, are going to start making moves. I think it's actually a really good argument. Faced with an existential crisis, either economically, due to population collapse or otherwise, look, a drowning person is not, they thrash about violently. And you know, they say when you're going to rescue someone who's drowning, you have to approach them from behind, otherwise they drag you down with them. For these countries that are facing existential crises, and that includes the United States, there's an option. Go to war. And we've seen it time and time again. And there's a lot of parallels to everyone's favorite empire, the Roman Empire. But I want to point out a few very important things. The World Socialist website, you know we love them, they report, British Army Chief issues call for conscription and whole of nation mobilization for war. It's not just Britain. Sweden has issued a call for their citizens to prepare for war, and there have been reports that people have begun signing up to be conscripted. So in Sweden, they have a system where you fill out a questionnaire and determine whether or not you will be forced to join the war effort. France 24 says, Sweden's call for population to prepare for war sparks panic and criticism. Now, I don't consider the World Socialist website to be all that credible. But here's the interesting thing. I believe conscription is the appropriate word based on the facts. Corporate news doesn't want to say conscription because of what it means to the average person. So, of course, the Times.co.uk says, UK must train citizens for war with Russia, says Army Chief. Let me just try that one for you again. UK must train citizens for war with Russia. In other words, citizens should prepare to be conscripted into war. The Times doesn't want to say it. Corporate press doesn't want to publicly state, we will conscript you and force you to go to war, because that is never popular. And I believe if all the big outlets said right now, Sweden and the UK have issued calls for conscription, then there would be a major push against escalation to stop the war. So they want to keep that out of sight, out of mind. But in the end, for those that are here in the United States, if Joe Biden decides tonight to issue a retaliatory strike on, say, the coast of Iran or something, or on specific targets, and he says, for too long, Iran has been supplying the Houthi rebels and other militia groups in Iraq and Syria, and this has now resulted in the death of 3 American citizens, America will retaliate. We will not back down. If he strikes Iran and Iran says we're going to war and then calls in their allies and this escalates dramatically, do not be surprised if they start sending out draft orders.
I have, unfortunately, a son of draft age. And when I say unfortunately, it's not unfortunate
like
that I have a
him.
son.
It's
I like my
unfortunate that
son.
he's draft
It's
age.
unfortunate that he is draft age. And it is, as a father, not something that I want to see happening, obviously. But in my entire life, though, I've always grown up always thinking that if we're attacked, if our assets are attacked overseas, that we must retaliate. The problem today is I don't believe anything anymore. I don't believe anything. Right. Yep. I mean, and when we start talking about conscription in Sweden or especially in the UK, it's like Orwell spinning around going, "I told you so. I told you so."
I love my father, but I remember that one of the first big fights we had, I was maybe 11 or 12. We were watching some war footage on TV, and I told him, I will never be drafted. They'll try, and I'll never fight those wars. I don't know, it just felt inherent to my soul. He got really mad, like, how dare you not want to protect your country and stuff. But my dad buys into a lot of like the corporate press. Although watching Fox 5 and stuff, he buys into that whole narrative of patriotism.
And he's from an older generation.
Yeah, and I get it, and I get why he was mad. And I always thought about that fight, but I believe I double down on that feeling I had then. More.
But you know what? It's sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
That there used to be a generation of people who said, I believe in my country wholeheartedly, I will fight for them.
Yep.
But the problem is, we have seen time and time again, the military-industrial complex and special interests send young men, mostly men, off to die for no reason other than their bottom line.
Yeah, and I should add to that, because of what Tim just said, I grew up next to a military base, seeing basically people who are my surrogate brothers and sisters, older brothers and sisters who were cadets, come back with no limbs, going to die for wars that made no sense. So that was the world I was born up into, and it made absolutely no sense.
Yeah, this is the conversation my family had when my brother enlisted and he deployed to Afghanistan with the Marine Corps. It was like, but why are we here? Like, right. I respect that was the path he thought was right for him, and everything else. But also, is this the operation that I think is most value for your time? Not to mention all the risks, but all service members' families are going to worry about the risk. It was like, we don't even need to be here.
Yeah,
and you're going anyways.
Yeah, risk is important.
Yeah.
And we should be, and the military to some degree can be important. But what has become the industrial complex that Eisenhower warned about, we are living in.
In August of 1859, astronomers around the world watched with fascination as the number of sunspots began to grow on the surface of the sun. Among those astronomers was Richard Carrington, an amateur skywatcher in a small town called Redhill near London in England. On September 1st, as Carrington was sketching sunspots, he was blinded by a sudden flash of light. So bright that he thought a hole had formed in his observation screen and that he was directly observing the sun. After adjusting his equipment and finding to his surprise the intense white patches remained, he ran out of his studio to find a secondary observer. But when he returned, the bright spots had already faded. What he didn't know at the time was that the explosive energy that he had just witnessed on the surface of the sun was now rushing towards him and everyone else on Earth. What Carrington had seen was a major coronal mass ejection, a burst of magnetized plasma from the sun's upper atmosphere, the corona. It usually takes multiple days for a coronal mass ejection to reach Earth, but just 17.5 hours later, the ejected plasma had traversed over 90 million miles, 150 million kilometers, between the sun and the Earth and began to unleash an unprecedented geomagnetic storm. Auroras, otherwise known as the Northern Lights, were seen as far south as the Caribbean. The aurora over the Rocky Mountains in the United States was so bright that the glow woke up gold miners that were there, who began preparing breakfast because they thought that it was morning. Electrical systems all over Europe and North America began to fail, and telegraph pylons threw sparks and in some cases electrocuted their operators. Spontaneous fires were reported in several major cities. Some telegraph operators even found that they were able to continue to send and receive messages after they disconnected the power supplies from their telegraph machines.